Welcome to the Upside Podcast, powered by Upside Global and hosted by Julian Blinn, founder and CEO of Upside Global. The Upside Podcast is listened to weekly by over 6,000 sports and tech executives from all sports leagues and teams in the United States and around the world. Julian has been developing technologies for professional sports teams for over 10 years and has worked for major tech companies along with sports tech startups. In each episode, Julian interviews global leaders in sports to share knowledge on emerging technology in the sports industry and how these technologies can help improve the performance of individuals and organizations, both on and off the playing field. And now here's your host, Julian Blinn.
So today we have the honor of interviewing Mike Proman, the partner at Scrum Ventures, an early-stage venture firm with a strong presence in the US and Japan. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Julian, and good to be here as well.
It's great to have you on the show as well. So first, obviously you've had an interesting career, right? Path leading up to your work at Scrum VC. Can you share a bit about your journey into venture capital and what originally drew you into sports and tech investment space?
Well, it's a loaded question, I think, in so many different ways. I don't know how to answer that. But yeah, if you told me 23 years ago when I started my career that this is where I'd be now, I'd probably tell you you're bullshitting me. I never really felt that this was going to be a career path. But I think the role of venture has changed dramatically in the last 20 plus years as well. And when I started my career with Coca-Cola, working in their global sports marketing team on the Olympics and FIFA and the NBA, it exposed me to a lot of opportunities within the sector. Obviously it's a very small, somewhat incestuous industry, and relationships matter. And those relationships have enabled me to do some pretty amazing things, working with places like the National Basketball Association, helping build out their international business in the mid 2000s, be able to leverage that in my own startup back in the late 2000s and ultimately to acquisition in 2011 and then channeling that momentum into the venture world. I think there are just a lot of opportunities. There are gaps in the market, and having kind of diverse experience and skill sets has served me pretty well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, let's talk about the state of the sports tech investing world, right? So from your vantage standpoint as Scrum VC, how would you describe the current state of the sports tech investment landscape? And are there any specific trends or shift that you're seeing in how investors and startups are approaching innovation in this space? I mean, everybody's talking about AI, for example, right? It's a big, big one right now. But I just feel like there's a lot of, AI companies, but I'm not sure they're all great. I'm not sure they have something unique. And I feel like it's like when VR and AR was becoming a big thing, then everybody jumped into AR, VR space for sports, and then same thing with AI. And whenever there's a new thing that comes around, a new buzzword, from the big tech companies, everybody jumps on it.
Yeah, obviously AI's prominence it's real. I don't think it's going away. I think it'll continue to evolve. Like a lot of kind of very nascent industries, it's kind of Darwinism at its best, right? The one will, some will wither away and some will get bigger, stronger, faster, and become the next unicorns. With all of that said, there is a lot of noise. And if you look at where venture funding has been, particularly at a broader level, not just in sports, AI is dominating it. I don't necessarily disagree with my peers and other funds that are deploying into AI related technologies and opportunities. But the saturation is pretty pronounced right now. And I think, well, I'm not a contrarian necessarily from an investor standpoint. What's interesting to us and to me in particular are kind of three things right now. One is brands and companies with strong IP. AI will disrupt a lot of things, but if you have strong IP, I think that's a very strong piece of defensibility. I think also in kind of the defensibility line, the idea of owning data sets that are unique. AI will be able to extend, amplify, enhance, whatever you'd like to call it, what you can do with that data. But if you own that data, again, I think you've kind of differentiated and set yourselves apart.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say, and this is much more kind of sociology than it is venture necessarily. But I've kind of championed this idea behind what I would call tribal tech. This notion that what are those technologies that bring people together at scale, that kind of connect people. I think sports is the best, living and breathing example of tribalism in the world, where, Julian, you and I can be complete strangers. But if we both go to US Bank Stadium this weekend and, I have my Justin Jefferson on and you have your JJ McCarthy on, we're on the same tribe for those 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I think what we look for, what I look for in particular, are technologies that enable that kind of connection. And it doesn't have to be just specific to sports, but I think sports is such a great example of that.
Yeah. Now, what is you? So, can you tell me a bit more about Scrum VC, right? What is your sports investment philosophy? Maybe some of the investment that you guys have done in the past. What are you looking for when you're looking to invest in companies? What's important to you? You talk about the IP, right? The management team, did they have previous exits? Obviously, the space that they're in. What are you guys looking into when you're looking to potentially invest in someone?
Well, I think the first thing we look for is, is this venture backable? I think that's a big challenge right now, particularly in sports, is you hear about, companies investing into this round or that round. The stage at which we play, we're traditionally kind of seed and Series A investors from an entry level. And, our end game is finding 10 to 20x. So a few things have to go right to be able to get there. Number one, you have to enter at the right valuation. I think has been a general reset within the valuations within the last 3 years. That's given us opportunities to kind of get in on the ground floor and feel really good about the positions that we have. But generally speaking, I think this industry has struggled with the idea of venture. There's just kind of this misnomer almost that anything is investable. And I don't disagree with that. But there are just fundamental differences in terms of what it takes to get to that double digit multiple in terms of a return profile. There's nothing wrong with 2, 3, 4x. And I think if you're really looking at endemic technology that supports teams, leagues, and properties, I think there's a path to probably getting there. But candidly, that's traditionally not something that we're really excited about. We like technologies that transcend the vertical, that have use cases and revenue streams and relevance within the sports and entertainment sector. But as we all know, this is an industry that is essentially kind of a rounding error in terms of overall TAM in comparison to these other high growth verticals. And so for us to be able to achieve the outcomes that we're underwriting these deals at, we need to be able to see revenue coming in other industries or from other stakeholders beyond just your traditional.
Other verticals, you mean?
Totally.
Yeah. Now, how many investment have you done so far with Scrum VC, and how many investment do you typically do every year?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't have a quota in terms of what we try to do every year. We're what I would like to believe is very opportunistic. We have been very active though, and the fund that I manage, it's again our first vertically focused fund at Scrum. We have 4 general funds. We have some other initiatives as well. This year we'll probably end the year with 8 to 10 investments, new investments, and that doesn't include follow-on investments. We've done within the fund to date 22 investments, and so that's just about a 3-year period right now. We'll be deploying fully next year as well, and then we're planning obviously follow-on cycles beyond that. So I would say our average check size is right around $1 million in terms of initial deployment, and then we follow on aggressively. Particularly where we see strong acceleration and growth opportunities. And, we're investing kind of on the cusp, I would say, of product market fit, sometimes right before, sometimes right at, and sometimes right after. And then we just look for new trends and new reasons to want to engage at deeper, more meaningful levels.
Now, you mentioned you're raising a new fund, I believe. Is that right? Like, how big is the fund that you want to raise?
Well, we closed the
Okay.
Scrum Sports and Entertainment one 3 years ago, or I'm sorry, we closed it about 2 years ago. We did an initial close 3
Yep.
years ago. That fund that we're currently deploying out of, the one I'm managing, is about 70 million, 70. And we are going to be very opportunistic about the way in which we deploy our capital, but traditionally we look to kind of slice it up 50-50 between initial check and follow on.
Yep.
But we'll continue to kind of go where the best opportunities are.
Which makes sense, because then once you invest, you want to make sure that as the company grows, you keep helping and supporting them. And, I think it makes sense, right? It's good that you have that, allocate some money for additional funding, right?
100%. I mean, I think when you look at the three S's of venture, right, the sourcing, screening, and supporting, not all venture firms are created equal. And we take a lot of pride in building strong relationships with our co-investment partners. That makes our sourcing efforts, somewhat seamless. We share a lot of deal flow. It's one of the things I think anybody who's in this industry, yourself included, probably love about it, is that people are great. You don't find that type of cohesion and just, outstanding folks, just, integrity, everything. I think sports definitely over indexes in that side of things. Within that middle S of the kind of screening or the diligence side of things, we're very discerning. We don't traditionally do deep diligence on, tens or hundreds of companies. When we get into a diligence funnel, it means that we have the conviction that we want to invest, and we're making sure that there's good alignment. And I think the other thing that we look for in diligence versus potentially other firms, we think about it as, we're going to invest, so what's our playbook, so to speak, to how to best help support that investment? When we're doing reference conversations, those are not just to kind of kick the tires and look for skeletons in closets. That's really to better understand, what is it going to take for us to make this company successful. And I think, understanding the voice of the customer is so critical in the investment life cycle. And it's something that we take a lot of pride in within that team. And then the last S is probably the one I get the most satisfaction out of, Julian, and that's the supporting side. I could spend every single day, every single hour just with our portfolio CEOs. They're some of the best people in the business. They're incredibly driven, intellectually, probably more superior than most people you meet. And I can learn a lot from them. So it's really not just satisfying, but very rewarding as well, to be able to kind of, feel like we're making a meaningful impact.
So on that, so looking back at your portfolio company, right? Are there any investment that stand out, either as favorites, big success stories, or perhaps valuable learning lessons? And what make this company or founder special in your eyes?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many, and it's like, you try not to rank your kids, right? But I think going back to what I was saying before about kind of data sets, IP, tribal, those are some of my favorite investments that we've made. I mean, if you look just on the tribal side of things, look at a company like Bandit, which is essentially currency now within the running community and in the running space. It's a brand that 3-4 years ago, very few people even knew existed. And today they're as ubiquitous as it gets. I mean, go out on the West Side Highway in New York at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, and it's basically like a Bandit fashion show. What is
So for those who don't know what the company does, does the product is about?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's really high-end, high-quality apparel for people who take their running seriously. And it doesn't have to mean you have to be a sub-2 marathoner or a sub-3 marathoner to want to sport the Bandit. It brings you into the Bandit community, and the way that they market that brand is outstanding. I mean, they literally could spin out their marketing team into their own company, and that could be $100 million business.
You do that for other companies, you mean?
Exactly. I mean, the connectivity, I mean, you look at something like running that's been around forever, right? And now, of course, it's kind of had a rebirth through COVID, and now you're seeing a lot of young people get into endurance. type of wellness and running his completely over indexed. But it's about how do you connect people with one another, and how do you do it in a way that differentiates. It's really tough. I mean, apparel, right, it's a challenging space. There are no barriers to entry, yet they have been wildly successful. And I give the team just a ton of credit for what they've been able to achieve on that front.
So it's obviously your favorites, yeah.
And definitely one of our favorites. We followed on a couple of times now within that company, and thrilled by what the team has been able to execute against, and just really high. They have high expectations. We have high expectations for them too. But you talk about a sport and kind of a brand that now has global appeal. That's also important to us as we think about kind of where do we want to deploy our capital. Another one, I'm sporting the hat right now. It's a New York-based company called Negotiate. It's a B2B licensing marketplace. Outstanding management team and founding team. They're solving real-world problems. And when you think about the relationship between licensors and licensees and strong IP, licensing is such a mess. And being able to provide a meaningful solution for all audiences and within a marketplace structure, they knock it out of the park. Now, again, different stages where Bandit is today. But everything about these companies that we support gives us full kind of confidence that they're going to get to the milestones that they've set out to achieve. So we're very fortunate, as I said before, to be engaged with such outstanding companies, but also with good co-investors. And so we learn a lot from them, and we get a lot of really thoughtful advice as well.
That's great. Now, last question. So for anyone looking to enter the sports tech investment world, right, whether as an investor or a founder, what advice would you give to them? And are there any traits, mindset, or strategies that you think separate the most successful people in the space from the rest?
Yeah, as I said, I think the face of venture is changing significantly. I think I'm a reflection of that. I wasn't the guy who had his iBanking or his private equity experience or deep finance kind of acumen. And I think that what matters is kind of what you want to do in venture, right? If you want to be early stage venture, I think that supports a much more kind of, let's call it liberal arts style background, much more qualitative than quantitative. I mean, I would candidly, 90% of our diligence work is qualitative at this stage. However, some of my, peers who work in growth stage venture, right? At that point, there's product market fit. The businesses are humming along, and it's just about execution. And so kind of what it requires in terms of skill sets and experience is dramatically different. I'll say it straight up. I would be mediocre at best at what at investing at a growth stage. It's just not who I am. And over a 20+ year career of building relationships within this space, and now kind of within the venture world, I've really kind of aligned with what I'm really good at. Really just putting my head down and really trying to be laser focused at that. It's a tough evolving world and space in particular. And I think just candidly, two things kind of matter the most. Number one is relationships. If you want to source a company, if you want to diligence a company, or if you want to help support that company, everything goes back to kind of who more than what you know. And then the last piece is just trying to think about things in a much more kind of diversified way. I mean, there's so many people who've lived their lives within the rights holder space and kind of see one perspective. I will say, having the operator experience, myself and working on the rights holder side of the equation, working on the brand side, it's made me a much more well-rounded, more kind of empathetic investor, somebody who tries to balance kind of my own objectives with what it is other people want to achieve as well. It enables us to call bullshit when we see it, right? Is that we feel like we have enough life experience and understanding to say, these are things that traditionally have not worked. And we want to avoid those potholes rather than continue to hit our head against the wall and be completely kind of one path forward. So, I'm really fortunate to work with outstanding people internally and externally. There's not one kind of thing or kind of moment that kind of gave me this opportunity. I think it's just a summation of a lot of years of iterating and just continuing to build on relationships. And sometimes the right things happen at timing, everything. You get it.
I mean, I always tell people in the world of elite sports or sports, it's about a relationship, right? So it's and if as a startup you don't work well with people and you try to build a relationship with some of the biggest team in the world, it's going to be a problem, right? But if you're very good at that, if you have a background in sports, then it's easier to get things going. So it's people.
Well, yeah, and when you see where the sausage is made, right?
Yep.
How it's made, and on the rights holder side, it really kind of sends the right understanding of how this industry is constructed, and there's certain things that you can't change, and I think you have to recognize and accept that. What you can do is how to navigate around those things, and it goes back to the comment I made earlier about how we look to invest. If a disproportionate amount of revenue is coming from teams, leagues, or properties, candidly, it's probably not venture backable. It's probably investable, but it's probably not venture backable. And it's not because those aren't outstanding customers. It's just the fact of, you can't point to venture style exits that have leveraged that playbook before. I would, it's interesting. Like if I know a lot of people who will kind of swear by investments that just speak to the rights holder community. And I would challenge them and say, hey, listen, I would take any of the Mag 7 publicly traded companies, in a 10-year horizon. And I'd bet I would outperform than a company that sells exclusively into the rights holder community.
Yeah. You mean the teams? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Well, teams, leagues, properties, exactly.
I mean, I always tell startups, like, you want to start in sports per se, but then you want to get into, government, healthcare, industrial.
Cool.
These are much bigger markets. Of course, there's regulations. For example, oil and gas, there's different regulation and standards you have to meet. And as an investor, you can literally could maybe, spin off some of those ventures and have multiple exits too. It's possible. But from an investment perspective, it's much more appealing if someone is into multiple verticals, right?
Totally. I think there's always something to be said about focus, but you focus on the top line and focus on kind of what's going to give you the outcome that you're selling to your investors.
Yep, and that makes sense. Now, last question: anybody who wants to reach out to you, you personally or the firm, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get a lot of emails. I try my best to respond to ones that obviously align with our company's philosophy and strategy. My email is michael@scrum.vc. I'll give it out regularly. As I said, I get hundreds of emails here, so be patient, I guess, in terms of a reply. But I think one of the things I take a lot of pride in is, I try to kind of leverage kind of this social curiosity, and I think that's really important as an investor. If you just invest based on your biases or what you're probably going to just scratch the surface in terms of where opportunities are. I love having conversations with founders as much as I can. There's just not enough hours in the day, unfortunately, sometimes to have as many as I want. But it does expose me to new opportunities and technologies that, candidly, I wouldn't have known otherwise. And, our latest investment is a great example of that. It's in the therapeutic plasma space, right? Like, it's not a space that I'm, incredibly knowledgeable about, but we wanted to get curious in. And we wanted to understand kind of, the connection points within sports and entertainment. And more importantly, how does this kind of manifest itself outside of the vertical and support that kind of venture scalable outcome. So, you know, I'm all ears all the time. You know, as I said, I have an outstanding team that, you know, I work with internally here at Scrum, and, you know, just really fortunate to be surrounded by such talented people.
That's great. Well, look, thank you for your time today, and very insightful. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To access past episodes and other research, articles, and analysis of sports technology, please visit our website, theupside.us. Subscribe to the Upside newsletter and receive full access to our sports tech business letter and website. Royalty-free music is provided by ibaudio.com. The Upside podcast provides timely insights and interviews with global leaders in sports technology. Until next time, keep looking to the upside.